Down the middle of the cup, lane to the cup, and he lays it up and in. Alec Burks is not getting the same defense that he had the other night, and he is taking full advantage of it. 8 points.
I finally got busted. It's the random highlight from any game last year, and that one sucked. Hey, it's David Locke. It's tip-off from a Civic to a Tesla. We'll talk about a bunch of our young guys, the USA, and the world. It's all coming up on today's edition of Tip-Off. Pow! I want to, first off, I want to tip my hat to Amy Donaldson, who did one of the most difficult things to do in journalism, which is just to open up the book of your life and share it. And I often think it's unfortunately an obligation that many journalists have, because if you can share and impact people, you have the ability to impact and share people. Amy Donaldson shared her story of being on the wrong side of domestic violence today in the Deseret News, and I would strongly suggest reading it. I think it's well done, it's eye-opening, it's painful, it's honest, it's informative, it's very good. In fact, I really would like to hope that in some way that it becomes national, because I think it's something that needs to be read by many, many people, and that's where journalism has huge value to be able to do that. So I wanted to tip the hat to Amy there. We'll touch on, I thought Tony Jones had a great Favors piece. We'll talk about that a little bit. Gordon Hayward wrote his blog. He's done a nice job of creating his own narrative this year. We'll touch on that. Rudy Summer is done. So there's a bunch of things to talk about. Before we, Amy's piece had me actually thinking, and I wanted to share this thought before we got into hoops. People might disagree with me on this. I actually feel pretty strongly. I don't think there's a lot of disagreement on this. I just think it's a perspective change. What we're experiencing in the NFL, I'm sure the NBA is not going to be innocent of it also. I mean, the Danny Ferry situation is not good. The Donald Sterling situation is pretty bad. So the NBA is in the middle of this too. What we're experiencing makes you kind of feel like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with us, right? I mean, even, I think the Oscar Pistorius thing's a little bizarre too. You kind of feel like, you just really feel like, gosh, what is wrong with us? Why? However, let me back it up a different perspective. Here in 2014, we are, I think we're far better society than we were. Amy Donaldson couldn't have written that article. Probably it'd still be stuck. I don't know how many years ago. You decide that. Donald Sterling's comments X amount of years ago wouldn't have been a problem, and would have been probably pushed off. So would have. And I think we see that reaction. I mean, the fact that we're not there, right? So that's my point. And the terrible stuff that has a lot of us shaking our head, and I mean, the fact that the Baltimore Ravens tweeted out Janae Rice's apology is horrific, totally horrific. But it's representative of where we were, where we're coming from, and what we're progressing out of. I don't know that I really think it's representative that we're terrible today. I guess that's my point. I always chuckle. Every now and then I'll be at the gym, and there'll be, older folks on the stuff around me, and they'll be, doing what I'm sure I'll be doing in 25 years, which is haranguing about how terrible this generation is. I couldn't disagree more. Sure, there's areas I'm sure they don't think our work ethic's good enough. We're too fine. We're more open. Victims have better rights. Minorities have more, are not as oppressed. We're far better place to live than we used to be. We're not there. But I don't think we need to just be. I kind of feel like there's this. Wow, we only suck right now because we're willing to admit it and talk about it, rather than the past generations, which sucked and didn't talk about it and ignored how much they sucked, I guess would be my point of view. So anyway, different thing to start the day. Just, you can chew on that. Feel free. You're always welcome to send me a thought on those kind of things. Let's get to the events of the weekend. First off, I was at the Zone 1280 The Zone golf tournament on Friday at It used to be Homestead. I think it's Crater Springs now. Wonderful event. Tip of the hat to Craig Davis from Questar, who's my favorite playing partner ever. I have golf scramble anxiety. Tough thing, hashtag first world problem. Hashtag good life. But I had a great time with Craig. So really had a wonderful time. Great event. Neat to see all the people and just where that radio station's gone. It was a big leap by the Jazz to buy it a few years ago, and Scott Gerard's led the way with those guys to build it into something great. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. How about that article on Derrick Favors by Tony Jones? Hope you read it this weekend. I retweeted out, sit down, I've done with Derrick. I mean, Derrick just truly, we really have gotten to know who he is. He's an inner city Atlanta kid raised by his mom and his grandma who's a homebody. He's a homebody. He's not a flash guy. He's polite. I've told the story numerous times. He's the guy who takes his headphones off anytime you come up near him because he doesn't want to be rude and not be available. He's not flashy. He's not Richard Sherman, certainly. But he is, the more you get to know him, he's funny. I was listening back last night as I was preparing for my production interviews with these guys this year to all the pieces I did with Derrick over the last 2 years. And you can feel that as he trusts you and as he gets more comfortable, he's pretty funny. He tells great stories. He told a story about playing spin the bottle in one of my interviews last year. Oh, you're doing bad things. But I got lucky and got to kiss a girl. It was just great. It's not his voice. That's mine. So I just, it's as a real fan favorite, I would hope this year. We've seen him. He's grown to be here. He's embraced the area as very few, maybe nobody ever has, actually. If you really think about it, mailman a little bit, but I'm not sure we have ever had a player if we ever had a player live year round while playing. Maybe Mark Eaton in Utah. That's what Derrick has done. It's important. A lot of people have tweeted out. It shows that we can get stars. I'm not sure that. It shows that this place works for the right guy. It works. It works for Derrick Favors. It might probably wouldn't work for. Yeah, I don't want to go there. Someone will take that implication wrong. But you understand what I'm saying, and I think that's an awesome sign that Derrick is showing that. Derrick's showing that this works, but he's being honest about it. Hey, it works because I like to stay home. I got my dogs. I got my girl, and I'm content. I don't need to party life. I don't need to be out. I don't need excitement. He's not an adrenaline-seeking guy. Neat article. The story about his father has been written on and off, and for those who don't know the background of it, it's a pretty incredible story. So his mom worked for an airline company. I think she was on the ground food and beverage, if I remember correctly, getting the food ready for the planes, and they went on strike. Tough times, and during that strike, she ended up getting, hooking up with another worker who was also on strike, and getting pregnant and having Derrick, and the dad never had any part in Derrick's life until he talks about this in the feature interview I did with him if you want to hear it. He's at Georgia Tech, and his grandma calls him and says, hey, your father called. And I asked him what his reaction was. He said, well, I'd never heard that word before, father. I thought it was a pretty poignant moment. This was while I was at Georgia Tech. He suddenly, it's his 1 year at Georgia Tech. He's being talked about as a top 5 draft pick. I believe his dad lives in Denver at the time of the story. Chris Thomason wrote it for the Denver Post. And Derrick decided that he didn't need that he was content, that he was comfortable, that he had been raised by 2 fabulous people, that he was 18 years old and had not needed that in his life, and that he didn't need to go on some hunt to find something out, and opted not to communicate. I don't know what other communication has gone on back and forth since then. There was a big article, as I said, written in the Denver Post about it, and maybe it had been the Rocky Mountain News, but one of the two, about that. And yet, my best of my knowledge, and the way Tony wrote it in the story, is Derrick has opted to never communicate that he's content. I didn't need him. I think his exact quote to me was, I didn't need him in my first 18 years, maybe one day, but I don't see it. So pretty strong, really strong for an 18-year-old. It tells you a lot about the kind of the inner strength that is Derrick Favors, that quiet persona is certainly a big um, and shyness is not a sign of weakness in any way, shape, or form. As I've told you, he looks fabulous. He says he's lost weight, but he really looks like the way I would say a 2-year art project looks like. If you had a great artist who was drawing a painting, and after a year you saw it, you'd be like, wow, that looks good. It's not there, but it's good. All of it's been refined, right? Like the angles are a little strong. He really looks like a beast. Maybe it's who he's up against on the floor in the games, but he looks like a beast. And I think he'll have a nice year. He really had a pretty nice year, and particularly in the feature interview I did with him last year at the end of the year, he talked about kind of how overwhelmed he was by the burden of 35 minutes every night, and how too often he found himself looking at the opponent and being like, all right, I'm going to sneak through this one to get to the next one, then have a bad night. Now I think he'll understand. And some of that also, though, is going to be basketball confidence, because at some point he's going to see the matchup against Rad Slidovac, whatever his name is, from Milwaukee, who I don't think is in the league right now. And instead of trying to take that night off, that was the example he used, actually. Instead of taking that night off, he's going to look at it and go, oh, I can kill him tonight. You know, I don't think Derrick has yet to walk into a game looking at a game saying, oh, I can go put up 24 and 12 tonight. I'm better than this guy. I think he's looked at more nights of like, oh, I better be on my game or I'm going to get humiliated. That's a huge quantum mental switch into a game. It may be what Gordon Hayward in his blog is talking about playing its better players every day, how much it gains your confidence and makes you improve. That's a large part of what we're talking about with these players, is that you look at your opponent, you're like, oh, I can kick your ass. And you go, I'm going to put it on you tonight. I don't think we've seen that yet out of Derrick. Maybe we begin to. Certainly of our younger guys, that's just not a place where they've been yet. I think Alec is good enough that he just goes and scores. But I don't think he has the feeling of, ooh, this is my game, I'm going to go put it on this guy tonight. And I think that's going to be a big change. So anyway, fabulous piece by Tony Jones on a great guy. I love Derrick. And it's neat to watch him. He and his girl are neat together, or woman, or whatever. I don't mean that. I'm using his word. She was out in Miami last year and made him go take sushi. We were there at the restaurant with him, and just kind of to watch him do that kind of stuff. He's a really enjoyable young man. Interesting article written by himself, Gordon Hayward, about the summer. He touched on a lot of things. One, he's got a Tesla now. So Gordon Hayward has gone from a Honda Civic to a Tesla. His first car was a Honda Civic. Now he's got a Tesla. He must be shipping that out, because I guess you're probably not driving a Tesla across the country unless you can find charging stations. So pretty cool. I'm gonna have to find myself get a little trip in that, which tells you a little bit about Gordon, right? The Honda Civic, I think, was an interesting statement on who Gordon was at the time. I'm stay under the radar. I'm very frugal. There's no flamboyance to who I am. The Tesla's a little more of like, hey, I'm arrived, here I am. It's also reasonable. He's got enough money now. He probably could have one here and one there, frankly, or two there, two here. But I thought it was interesting. He told some funny stories about the social media interaction with fans. I thought a real side of Gordon came out in that article. There's a little bit, he's polishing himself in these articles. I know him well enough to know that there's a real edge, that he's not writing about his frustration that he didn't make the U.S. team. He's just writing about the good part of the experience. Everything I've heard is he was really on edge about the fact that he didn't feel like, kind of felt like that decision was made before it needed to be. There's one line in there where he says they seem to decide to go away from wing players, which is true. The bunch of guys didn't make the team. Who were kind of in his versatile wing players. I think he just feels like, well, I didn't have a shot. They changed what they were doing. And that's what I've said the whole time. When Paul George went down, he had a chance. When Kevin Durant stepped out, he no longer had a chance, because it changed the way that they were playing the game. He also shared his workouts that he's been doing in Indianapolis 5 days a week, and what the schedule is. Just gives you a little idea. He does. I think he might be in town today. I might get to see him today, so look forward to that. Anyway, that's a good little piece as it's a good little piece of this running. Sorry, I just got Avast just put me a big warning right in my face, like, you have this ad on running and it's not safe. So anyway, I thought those were two cool things. Gobert wins the bronze medal. I believe that's the first medal ever for France, and I can tell you just from times past with Rudy, this is crazy important to him that he got this experience. It will be great to watch him play. And I think Rudy's an interesting one. Rudy has got such a unique skill set that his minutes are going to be dictated by him, particularly with Quinn. I mean, I do think that there was a level that yes, that Tyrone Corbin had there were probably limits clearly on how many minutes say Derrick and Ennis could have received when they were playing behind Paul and Al. There was a level of respect to what those guys had accomplished and who they were as players, and I think frankly, playing the numbers, those guys were better players, and if one of the other guys got hot, then they just had a good stint and he went back to his regular guys. We saw that a million times. I'm not sure Quinn will be the same way, particularly this roster. I'm not sure Ty would be the same way with this roster, because with the youth on this roster, a matchup for Rudy Gobert may be a bad matchup for Enes Kanter, or a good or bad matchup for Derrick Favors. And so if Rudy's having a big night and not getting in foul trouble and his rebounding and rim protection is more important than some of the things Derrick brings to the table, then I think there's a chance you'll see, if Rudy can play out of foul trouble, pass in traffic, make his free throws, that there'll be plenty of nights where he's going to get extended run. I think these guys will truly dictate their own minutes this year in a way they haven't in the past, as much because of the roster complexion as because of the head coach. Just that there's really not a veteran on this roster who's got this track record that says that if Rodney Hood is having a great day and is on, that it necessarily you're going to be better off going to Gordon Hayward. I'm not sure that that's clear on this roster the way it is right now. So we'll see how that plays. I'm trying to think what else I had for you. National NBA, there was not a lot today. All of it was kind of recapping FIBA, which I was going to touch on. And what the worry on the U.S. not winning this thing, as I said earlier, I just thought I didn't get it. I guess is the best way I can say it. I just didn't get it. Our starting five is better than everybody else's starting five. We've got better players. I think we saw that Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis in the next generation of this game are really pretty darn good. And I think that's maybe what the takeaway should be, that this younger group of guys still was dominant. And there's a movement to under 22 or something else. This was basically 25 and under, and we just have a depth level that is better than anyone could possibly equal across the world, and we're just so much better. And I think that's I think that's just how it is. And I thought that there was just a level of maybe there was too much worry, or maybe it was trying to create a story. I don't know, but the FIBA was dominant, and the U.S. team was dominant. Adrian Wojnarowski wrote a scathing piece on it that will be probably is worth a read as well. So I've given you a lot of reading material today along the way. All right, that kind of wraps up what I've got. Let me see if any questions have come in today. It was a fun weekend. Hope everyone took in all the various things. There was a bunch of NFL. It's weird. I actually, Sunday morning, I will admit that Sunday morning I debated whether to turn on the NFL or not. It was an interesting. I sat there and I was like, not going to do any good. I'm not going to make any statement. It's not going to change. But do I want to support this by watching it? And I actually did that with my daughter, and I watched the Sunday night game, so I guess it didn't last. But it was a thought. All right, let's go to the questions. Good, a bunch are in. I love this. I got a neat experience today. I have to head down. I'm going to head down and sit down with Brian Miller for his new book on Larry H. and answer a bunch of questions and record a bunch of things. Pretty nervous about it. Trying to talk about Larry. Wow. From Craig Lillard, he can be related to Damian. It's not that. It's Liddard. So Lidard maybe? Has Kanter been part of the workouts? How's his outside shot looking? He is here. He's been working out. He's still recovering a little bit from the knee stuff, and he's been working on his outside shot. But he's in town. He looks. I talked to him for a brief. He just stopped by, kind of walked by, and said, "Hey, Locke." I didn't talk to him. He looks slim to me. I thought he looked slimmer from a distance than he has. That could be totally wrong, but I just thought he looked a little bit sleeker than he has. Corey Schmidt asks, has the progression of Gobert and others over the summer changed your projection for the win-loss record next year? No, not really at all, actually, for two reasons. One is I can keep seeing how this team can improve. I can also see how they get less good without any veterans to stop bad stretches. But I can see how they can improve. But then they've got to be better than all of the other teams, right? So, if you finish 15th in the West, you win a certain amount of games. If you win 14th in the West, you win a certain amount of games. 13th in the West. So, you can kind of start piecing together, right? The number one team's going to win about 60 games. You can kind of walk down the road. So if you look at the team, I can easily say, okay, we won 25 last year. We won't have the Burke injury, or hopefully not. Well, this and that, little improvement. Everyone gets a little better. If you believe the coaching staff, improvement of modernizing the game will get you 2 or 3 wins. So you can walk yourself up to 33, 34 wins and say, okay, we're going to be a lot better. But then I'll step back and I'll say, now wait a sec, who are we better than? Right? Are we better than Sacramento? Are we better than a young Minnesota? Are we better than Anthony Davis in New Orleans? Are we better than the Lakers? Are we right? And then I get us at 13th, and I say, okay, well, that's still 25, 27, 28 wins. 29, 30. So you got to beat people along the way. You can improve, you got to beat people. I think the bigger one to watch, and this, in theory, should increase your win total is what our margin was. I think we were -7 last year. If you can get yourself into -5, -4, point is usually 2.7 wins. So if you start walking that down, 4 comes out to, let me do some quick math, about 12. So then you end up, if you get to -4, I think you get to right about 29, 30 wins, and that's a lot of progress. Is those 3 points? I think that's what you're probably, looking for. So and individual progress more than anything else, and style. But we're gonna have some tough moments. The offensive system we're putting in for the long term is right. For the first 30 games, could be really tough. Doug Chung, can the season start already? Yeah, it could. I need to do some more prep, and I'm actually already started. I'm on. It's time for. I got a lot of work, so I'm on. How's that? All right, Craig Lillard, but he's not Lillard, has another question. Would you agree that Favors seems to have realized that he can't be really good in this league on just his natural athleticism? He seems to have an attitude. He needs to have an outside shot, better post moves. Have you seen anything? I mean, I think that these guys all go through the first time they step on an NBA floor is the first time they're not the best player on the floor. And then that's staggering to a lot of them, and so they have to adjust. I think that's a little bit of what I've talked about, that I don't think he goes into games thinking now, hey, I can go get 24 and 12 on these guys, and that'll be the next step. Great questions. Good involvement. Thanks very much. Hope you're all well. Mini plans are available. It's the 15th of September. We'll be playing the Lakers a month from today in LA in our preseason. In 2 months, we'll be in Toronto for the last game of a 5-game East Coast road trip. It is all right there. See ya.